So can we talk about Apple's new Genmojis? Because they're kind of unhinged and I absolutely love them. Rest of the update, pretty underwhelming, honestly, but Genmojis, this is the future, I'm telling you. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and iOS 18.2 has been out for a few days now, so I wanted to just talk about it a little bit, some of the features, some thoughts and impressions. I don't really review iOS updates, I haven't in a long time at least, but this is a big one. It's an important one for Apple as they're ushering in this new era of Apple Intelligence and really trying to compete with the rest of the industry when it comes to this big AI trend that's been going on. And this is Apple's version. Is it good? Is it bad? Well, most of my opinion is I don't really care, but we'll get to that. And I particularly do want to talk about Genmoji because I think it is a lot of fun. I've been using the release candidate beta version on my iPhone 15 Pro Max for just over a week or around that. It's the oldest iPhone that can run it thanks to the A17 Pro chipset. And yeah, this is a big deal. They've been marketing Apple Intelligence for months. It was the big selling point of the iPhone 16, and it wasn't even on the iPhone 16 when it came out, which is just kind of crazy. And while there is a lot here, I was personally finding most of it to be pretty mid or mediocre at best, if I'm being honest. I found myself not really using the new features, and mind you, a lot of this stuff is things I just don't use anyways. Like I don't use Siri, I've never really used Siri. So we'll get to all that, and I especially do want to talk about Genmoji because I actually unironically think it's the best part of this update, and that might sound really dumb to some people, and it is, but it's just sort of a fun feature that actually works kind of pretty well, and also not, but that adds to how much fun it is, I think. So firstly, iOS 18.2 has been pretty stable for me. There's been some general bugginess with some of the AI stuff, but nothing crazy. At worst, you're just closing the thing and then reopening it. And being on the iPhone 15 Pro Max, it's surprisingly fast generating things. Like it's all pretty quick. Really, the biggest issue is I'm just not using it very much yet. And being on the 15 Pro, there are actually some features missing, like visual intelligence is only on the iPhone 16 and 16 Pro, which just feels silly to me. So I won't be talking about that too much in this video because I haven't experienced it for myself. And maybe one day I'll eventually give in and get one of those iPhones, give it a shot. But for now, I'm not really that interested to begin with. And I do think a lot of this stuff feels like it should be able to run on older iPhones, right? Are you really telling me you couldn't integrate ChatGPT into Siri on anything older than an iPhone 15 Pro, Apple? Is that really what you're saying to me? Because at this point, there's nothing to do with the local power of the phone anyways. You're just outsourcing the work to OpenAI. So why can't you have ChatGPT integration on every iPhone? It's kind of silly. You do have to wonder how much Apple is purposely limiting older phones so people maybe see the AI stuff as a selling point for the new phones. I think the average consumer really doesn't care that much about AI, if I'm being honest, but clearly some people do. They must, otherwise it wouldn't be as big of a deal as it is right now. And ChatGPT, like, it is really cool, right? Like, it's cool stuff. It's just for me not a selling point, but it's also sort of like, well, surely Apple, you could have put ChatGPT on like an iPhone 15. You're really telling me you couldn't? So it's no conspiracy. Of course, Apple limits older stuff, so people hopefully buy the newer stuff. Every company does that, but I do think it's just silly how much of it is limited to the best iPhones. And like visual intelligence isn't on the 15 Pro. I don't know. Just one of those things that just bugs me about Apple just a little bit. So we're going to talk about this as is for me and do a brief overview of some of the highlights of this update, just because I want to give some of my thoughts as a 15 Pro Max owner who has been using iPhone for 11, 12 years now. Oof. And it's interesting to see Apple finally do something to sort of dramatically shake up the iOS experience, at least in some way, because iOS is pretty good. They don't need to change a lot every year, and a lot of stuff they do change is maybe more cosmetic, like the new themes, how you can customize iOS 18 is pretty cool. The lock screens on, I think, iOS 16 was a very good addition. But these are things that don't necessarily impact the core of the experience, just more the aesthetic. And something like this, Apple Intelligence, it's really promising to shake up the experience once again. And I think for the most part, Apple's done a really good job with iOS 18 and making it feel like a significant update. I wish we got all this stuff in September because we should have, frankly, but Apple's clearly behind with AI, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I digress. So let's talk about iOS 18.2, the big additions. So first, visual intelligence, which I can't use, but it's sort of like Google Lens as far as I can tell, and some people might find it very useful. I saw some pretty glowing reviews about it. I don't know if I'd personally use it that much, but you can point it at stuff, it'll recognize it, tell you about it. I mean, that's cool, I guess. Not something I'm super interested in, but if it is something that stands out to you, then you need an iPhone 16 or a 16 Pro. Siri. So Siri sounds better, and she is better for sure. She's more contextually aware, she sounds more natural, and I think a lot of that was with 18.1, along with some of the writing tools. But with 18.2, Siri can now also tap into ChatGPT to basically fix her. Basically, when Siri is in over her head, she will just redirect you to OpenAI's good chatbot because it's actually good. I'm not going to get too much into the optics of using OpenAI. Well, frankly, they're not very open, but they're also not good with privacy. But Apple is good with privacy, so I have a pretty good level of trust in them that they'll handle this quite well, and I think they have. I really wish Apple had been far along enough in their own artificial intelligence to not have to rely upon something like ChatGPT, but the reality is Apple is very clearly behind, and they needed to rush a lot of this, and they've had to delay a lot of this, and it's all because of the big AI boom in the industry right now. You have to be able to compete with Microsoft Copilot and Google's Gemini, and so how do you do this? How do you immediately be able to actually compete with them? Well, you go to the new kids on the block who know what they're doing, and that's OpenAI and ChatGPT. So here we are. If you're concerned about privacy, I do not blame you, but the integration with Siri is all opt-in only. You don't have to use it. You need to go to Siri in your app to set it up, which is simple, and you can sign into your existing ChatGPT account if you want to, and in that case, I believe your queries are sent to OpenAI, but otherwise, I believe it's all handled privately, supposedly. What's kind of interesting is there's a limit on how many messages you can send to ChatGPT, and I understand why. ChatGPT has a message limit as it is, and it's pretty generous with how many you can have in one session, but just the fact that there's a built-in feature on my iPhone that I can't use as much as I want, theoretically, like I don't think I would be hitting these limits, but you know, still, it's a limitation, and the only way to bypass that limitation is to pay for an additional subscription that isn't even from Apple. Like something like iCloud is one thing, but to pay a different company in order to use a feature built into iOS feels a little bit weird to me. I'm not a huge fan, but ChatGPT in general is going to make Siri significantly better and more capable, and you can also make it so she asks first whether or not you want your prompt to be sent to ChatGPT. So basically, I don't know how to feel about this, but ultimately the functionality appears to be far more robust than Siri has ever been. She's never been that good, and that probably wouldn't happen without OpenAI, at least for a good while longer. So I'm glad it's optional. I'm sure there will be people who will use it a lot and really enjoy it. I use the ChatGPT app all the time. I don't use Siri. The app is great because if you just want to talk to a bot, ask it some basic questions, there's always little things like, oh, what happened with this? And it's maybe weird to Google search it, so you ask ChatGPT, and usually it's pretty good at giving you an answer. Having the app, it's easy, it's convenient, and so I don't see myself not using the app. I feel like I'm just going to keep using the app like I always have. The only times I use Siri as it is like if I want to send a text when I'm driving or something, you know, hands-free. Basic things she was already capable of, so I could kind of care less about all of this, but that's just my personal situation where I'm not really into all this stuff that much, and it all seems sort of cool, it's optional, and maybe it'll end up being far more useful than I expect in the future. I'm sure it will. Something like Siri shortcuts were something I was kind of underwhelmed by when I saw it initially. I didn't fully understand what that would entail, and it's a really cool feature. It still is. And so I don't want to downplay this evolution of Apple's software, because it could end up being really important to all of this, whether you're a skeptic of AI or not. So ultimately, it's indeed a major new addition, and I do think for a lot of people, it'll be useful, just probably not for me, and that's okay. Then we have writing tools, and some of this was 18.1, I believe, but now we've got more freedom and creative control in how you want to have the AI type out your email or your text, how it writes it. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I'll ever use this. I always found these messages sound like a robot wrote it, because it did. But then again, I work at home by myself. If I worked in an office environment or something where handwritten emails tend to sound maybe very uniform anyways, this feature would probably be pretty great. And maybe I should try using it for all those spam YouTube emails I get all the time, because there's a lot of them. So this is one of those features I think some people will find really useful. Maybe it's not for me, but whether you're on iOS or macOS, it maybe will be a help, and hopefully it is for some people. Now there's a few other little things, but I want to get into the more interesting stuff, at least for me, and that is mainly generative AI for images. Firstly, you've got that image wand thing where you can make an image in your Notes app, and you could have a sketch turn into an image on your iPad with your Apple Pencil, that kind of stuff. Then there's Image Playground, and this is a dedicated app, and if you don't have it already and you want it, and you know you're on a phone that can run it, 15 Pro and up, you can find it on the App Store, where it's got a brilliant 2.7 stars, at least on mine. I don't know if that's Canada's App Store or whatever, but I have a feeling this is in a large part based on some of the reviews, because when you download the app and just start trying to use it, you can't use it initially. It has to download the actual AI models in the background. It's not that clear about that, because it really looks like you should be able to use it, but nothing happens. I think a lot of people probably tried to use it, thought it wasn't working, and just never tried again. Surprisingly poor implementation from Apple, to be honest, and explanation. Once the model is downloaded, how this works is fairly simple. You describe an image or add a suggestion from the list, and we could have a dog running in a field or something. What they really want you to do with this app, and the real focal point of Image Playground, is that you can use an image of a person, and it'll try, typically unsuccessfully, to generate an image of that person based on their features, and it's not very good. You can go through images of yourself to hopefully find one that works more consistently, and I've seen some people get okay results, but it's kind of funny. You can just use an image of anybody. It's almost a little creepy. Like, I could download a picture of Tim Cook and have it generate an image of of Tim Cook, and it might sort of look like him. It's one thing to do this for yourself, but you could totally just scrub somebody's Facebook page or something and then send them images of themselves. And I'm probably overthinking it, but there is just this weird element that you can just make pictures of anybody. And obviously there is some really heavy filtering going on when it comes to the prompts and things, so you cannot do anything offensive or copyrighted, and that's for the best if we're being honest, I think. It is surprisingly fast, like it works pretty quickly, I'll give it that, and it can generate multiple options as you scroll through them in like pretty good amount of time. It's clearly a very small AI model doing the work on your phone locally, which is neat. It does heat up my phone quite a lot doing it, but it works overall pretty well, and you do basically have to add to the prompt. Like for the life of me, this thing was completely unable to figure out that I was blonde, and I am very clearly blonde, by the way. No, I'm wearing a hat, but if I add blonde to the prompt, it now understands, and so it's okay, I guess. My big issue with Image Playground is really twofold, and there is a positive element as well. And we'll start with the good. I think Image Playground is really novel. It's entertaining for at least a few minutes, just messing around, and for people who have maybe never messed with any image generation through like Bing or Stable Diffusion or whatever, this will probably be the easiest, simplest way to get into anything like that for iPhone users or Mac users. Just keep your expectations low when it comes to results, because they're not that good. Sometimes they're not too bad. I've seen some okay ones. You can do certain things, like if you had sunglasses, I find they get a little better because it's not usually very good with the eyes. Teeth are usually super strange too, and hands and all that. Yeah, expectations low. It's kind of fun in a weird way. I'm certainly not mad that Apple added this, and you know, there is a lot of controversy about AI in general, especially with image generation, I feel like, but this is from Apple. They didn't use stolen art to train these things. There's, I don't think, any real ethical or moral dilemma from my point of view, at least. And I think it's also important to note that this is very clearly all AI generated too, like not very good. And that in a way is a good thing because you can tell it's AI. You're not passing it off as your own work or anything like that, because like nobody's gonna buy that. It's not gonna cause issues like the AI generated slop that's all over social media nowadays. This is just mainly for fun, and that's kind of it. So that's sort of the positive take. It can be kind of fun, and why not? It's quirky, sure. But here's the two big issues I have with it. Number one, it does not generate good images, and I know that it will get better over time as they keep training these things and making them more impressive. They definitely wanted this to be fast, so that was probably one of the big focuses. But image generation from DALL-E to Stable Diffusion has been around for like a while now, and these images are really unimpressive compared to anything these tools are capable of, generally speaking. Like, I could make anything way better just using Bing for free in a few seconds. And of course, you have the whole element where you can make it look like a person, and that's really easy to do, and it works with your iPhone, and it's great. That's cool, but the actual tech here is not very impressive. You're kind of trading a lot of quality for ease of use, and you're not really gaining that much ease of use if we're being real. Ultimately, incredibly unimpressed by the quality of the generations. So, not to keep ranting, that's issue number one. Issue number two, why? I have no problem with adding fun features for the sake of it, but when I look at this, there's just no reason that I see outside of messing around until you get bored. There's really no practical element. You're probably not going to be sending this to a lot of people, or at least I'm not going to be, because I don't know, again, it's kind of creepy. Like, are you going to generate images of your friends and send it to them? Maybe. Close friends, sure. I just don't really see any point of this outside of Apple flexing their AI muscles, and they're not very big muscles. It feels like they just did this to be able to say they have image generation like everybody else, and I think there's just a practical element here missing, and it's not that well implemented being in its own app and everything, and there's just no use case I can see where this will actively make your iOS experience better. It might be fun for a little bit, and you know, this is coming from me. I messed with AI, especially when it was first really getting big, and I'm not really into the cutesy stuff some people might be. You know, all these photos that you can generate kind of look like, I don't know, Pixar people or something. It's not really my thing. Some folks will probably love messing with this and making cool generations of themselves. I'm just not one of them. Basically, my take, this is an incredibly mediocre application that probably doesn't need to exist, but I guess I would rather have it than not, because why not? But definitely don't go out and buy a new iPhone for this. You will be disappointed if you do. So that's Image Playground, and I didn't mean to drag this out as much as we have, but let's get to what I actually want to talk about, which is Genmoji. And considering what I just said about Image Playground, you're probably thinking my opinions of Genmoji wouldn't be that high, but I actually think they're pretty great. I actually love Genmoji, and I think it's going to be one of the most used AI features on iOS for sure. I think it's going to be really beloved too, because it's kind of just fun and it's well implemented and easy to use, which is important. And I'm not trying to over exaggerate. Some people will be like, dude, it's emojis, who cares? Yeah, I don't really use emojis, to be honest, hardly ever, but I've been using these because they're just funny to me. Some of these are just so unhinged and ridiculous that even a relatively cynical person like myself can make an emoji and it feels more ironic or stupid. There's nothing wrong wrong with using emojis. A lot of people do. I'm just not usually someone who does, but now it's kind of funny because instead of a laughing crying face, I've got a laughing crying face with drool or something going on. Like, it's just kind of dumb, and it makes people sort of like blink a couple times. Like, what am I looking at here? iOS emojis are basically their own language at this point. They're universally recognized. It's these emojis. If you're going to think of an emoji, you're thinking of the Apple styled ones. There's plenty of other variations of them, but the Apple ones have reigned supreme because so many people have iPhones and they're always consistent across all of those devices. And you have an emoji like this that everyone recognizes. It's become ingrained into our culture in a very strange way. If you send this to anybody, they'll know what you mean. It's a part of society, which is sort of crazy on its own, but specifically, this version of this emoji is the most known. It has that very distinct Apple style. So with Genmoji, you can now create your own Apple-styled emojis. And the results, again, can be extremely weird, and I love that. I actually think this probably is right now the best Genmoji will ever be, purely because Apple's probably going to make it better over time, which may make it less funny to me. I think there's a few things they definitely could improve. Like, sometimes it's not very good at recognizing certain prompts or understanding what you're trying to say, I think, but we'll see an example of that in a bit. There's very little consistency here, and sometimes it also kind of repeats generations a lot, but overall, you can get some hilarious emojis out of this, and I do think it's great. So how it works is simple. You open emojis in your keyboard, hit this little plus emoji button, and then type in whatever you want to generate. It won't work with anything you write, but more generalized stuff or feelings or emotions, whatever, it can do pretty well. Like, here's an example of it doing a poor job. If I put in the phrase help, because maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, you know, I need help. Well, now we get whatever this is, a white circle. And then the next one is like a blank face just staring forward in front of like a browser window, or it's so weird, right? This is a poor example of Genmoji, by the way. Most of them are better than this. If you keep going, you know, you see some more like, oh, the hands are raised. Sure, they're helping someone. That makes some more sense. And in this example, it ended up crapping out and it wouldn't generate anymore, which I believe would be a bug. So all you got to do is close it, retry. And assuming it doesn't bug out, you can just keep infinitely scrolling until you find one that you like. Then you hit add and it adds it to your keyboard, and then it's just there and you can keep using it in the future. I've had some that I actually quite like and will probably use in the future. There's two sides where you can get some decent emojis that like actually look like authentic Apple emojis. Like, I'll put up a couple that I think turned out pretty okay along with their prompts. Then there's this one. Can you guess what the prompt was? Probably not, although it makes perfect sense. The prompt was pain, P-A-I-N. Yeah, okay, that kind of looks like pain. That makes sense. Or what about this? The word was pissed, like you're unhappy. Why do we have feet? Why is this here? What I think I love the most is messing with pre-existing emojis and putting your own spin on them, sort of like, oh, it has teeth. Why does it have individual teeth? I don't think it's supposed to have that. And there's also an element here where Genmojis can be extremely specific to whatever niche conversation you're talking about. Random example, I was having a conversation that the context doesn't really matter too much. There's just two things of note. The person thought they might get pulled over by a cop at one point, and their boss is allergic to cranberry muffins. This was a part of the same conversation thread. So what do? Cranberries in jail. And while this isn't a good example because it's not that funny or entertaining, it's an example of something you can do now that you never could before. You can make an incredibly specific emoji that fits whatever you want it to fit. And that's really the beauty of all of this, I think. This one I got from the word smug. I just like the mustache. How about some failure with a melting man holding an ice cream cone? Why is he holding ice cream? I didn't tell him to do that, but it's great and it makes sense. Of course you go to ice cream when you fail. Why not? How about the word addled? It was the word of the day a few days ago. Yeah, that guy looks kind of addled to me. Exhausted, confused, headache, nuke. It let me put in nuke. I couldn't do anything like, I tried nuclear bomb and stuff, won't let you do that. Too offensive, I guess, you know, violent. But nuke got me this. Poor. It did like a piggy crying over a piggy bank. Like, why? You get the idea, and I truly think Genmojis are one of those features that certainly should never be a selling point in any way, but if you have a phone that can run them, I think people are gonna use them, particularly the kind of people who use a lot of emojis anyways. There's no practical use case in that these will impact your life in any significant way. Thankfully, they shouldn't. It's dumb and it should stay that way. But just because it's not making your life easier or helping you in any specific way, maybe it's adding a little bit of entertainment and is doing it in a way that's actually really well implemented. Unlike Image Playground, this is just in your emoji keyboard. So people will use it, they'll find it. It's really simple to understand and to do, and what you get is just silly, and that's fine. I think Apple should get credit for this. You did good here, Apple. I really think so. Just AI image generator purely based off of your own emojis, I think it's pretty fun. Again, I hope it doesn't get too good because these like confusing generations are just half the fun altogether, really. And again, there's filters and stuff. You can't do copyrighted stuff, offensive stuff, whatever. You can't do like Mario, right? It won't let you do anything like that. It wouldn't even let me do Italian plumber with a red hat and mustache, because like I'm guessing the nationality probably trips it up and won't do anything like that. But if I do plumber with red hat and mustache, it actually generates me. I didn't even realize it would do this. It actually takes you and it generates an emoji of you. And this one seems a little bit better to me than the image playground. In the very least, it's more fun. I mean, it's got my glasses at least. It sort of looks like me, and it's me as a plumber. Like, okay, why not, right? The rest of Apple Intelligence thus far, nothing's really stood out to me. Image playground kind of sucks. There are summarization of notifications. That's kind of an interesting one. They're sort of entertaining sometimes because they don't understand context a lot of the time. So they'll say things that are like, how did it get this from these messages? But for the most part, it's actually not too bad. And I think that's kind of cool. All this stuff is going to get better with time. But yeah, main takeaway, Apple, please don't fix Genmoji. Keep it as is, or maybe make it a little better, but not any less unhinged, please. And that's the main message I want to get across here. Genmoji is fantastic. So if you are watching this video and thinking, oh man, I don't have Apple Intelligence, my iPhone's too old, I dared to buy an iPhone in 2023, the iPhone 15, like it is so stupid that phone can't run any of this, but whatever. If you're feeling a little left out or whatever, honestly, you're not missing much. And I don't think really much of any of this is going to be much of a selling point, or it probably shouldn't be. It might be a little novel for a little bit, but that's kind of it, at least for me. Still, there can be some fun with it, and some people will find it genuinely useful, which is a very good thing, I think. And Genmoji is fantastic. So that's it from me. Quick video today. The other day, I posted a much longer video where I went through every single iPhone ever and determined the worst one of all time. So maybe go check that out if you haven't seen it already. I had a lot of fun putting that together. Link in the description. And we do have a Discord server. Come by, say hi. Would love to see you over there. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Hit that like button. That actually helps out a ton. Comment your thoughts on all this stuff down below. I'm very curious. I'm sure there'll be probably some negative feelings towards Apple down there. That's usually how these things tend to go, and that's totally fine and understandable, frankly. Huge shout out to the channel members for being absolutely amazing people. You guys are the absolute best, and thank you so much. And thank you all so much for watching. Keep generating those Genmojis. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.